daunting. And that was the context in which there's this little clip on television of me debating someone who'd been hired, a journalist who'd been hired by the Pulp and Paper Company to put together a film documentary of what a mistake they had made the previous year by listening to us. So I won't give you a blow-by-blow of my life as a young activist, just to say that there wasn't any special, I didn't identify myself as a young activist. I didn't have the support or mentoring of other people in a movement. What we had was, sad to say then, a more open democracy. We were able, from all of our kitchen telephones across Cape Breton Island, using things like phone trees, where one person calls 5 people, and each of those 5 people have to call 5 other people. That was the concept of phone trees. It worked almost like a listserv, except it took longer. Anyway, the phone tree campaign, we actually managed to swamp the telephone lines into the Premier's office in Nova Scotia, so that they got so many calls on their phone lines that the phone lines broke down. And that was on one afternoon when we got a hot tip that the cabinet was meeting and considering the request from the pulp company to spray our whole area. We won that campaign year after year after year, because every year the pulp company would ask again. The first year they demanded that they'd spray was the fall of '75. They got turned down in spring of '76. Then they demanded in the fall of '76 that this had been such a huge disaster, and that's when they got the film documentary that said this had been a disaster. And then in spring of '77, we won again. And it came up again, fall of '77, won in spring of '78. And then by that point, the thing that we had hoped would happen did happen, and that without poisoning the entire environment and forest of our area, the budworm outbreak collapsed of natural causes. So there were no longer any budworm to spray. That gave us a bit of a break, at which point the uranium industry moved into Nova Scotia and said it wanted to start uranium mining. So we're busy fighting uranium mining on one side. And again, we're still not a formalized environmental group. Still a bunch of people with phone lists. And then in the summer of 1982, while we're fighting uranium mining, and we just won, we'd just gotten a decision from the Nova Scotia government there'd be a moratorium on uranium mining, and almost at exactly the same time, they announced that they would be allowing the spraying with Agent Orange on forests to kill trees in our area. So that was a bit of a shock. And someone I knew was close enough to a cabinet minister in the government of Nova Scotia that this was how they made the decision. They said, well, we let them win on uranium mining, we couldn't let them win on Agent Orange too. It was completely crazy. This is the kind of politics I hate, is the decision when we let environmentalists get a good decision once, you can't do it twice. So then we were 2 years in court fighting Agent Orange, and I won't tell you that story in detail. It's pretty depressing. I was in law school when the campaign started. I ended up being a lawyer working on the campaign, a lawyer's assistant working on the campaign, and our chief fundraiser, and one of the plaintiffs. And there were 13 other plaintiffs, and in the course of that effort to stop the spraying of Agent Orange, my family lost our land in a seizure by one of the pulp companies. I won't mention them, but please don't buy anything from Scott Paper. So anyway, the campaigning and the movement for youth, I think there's been a tremendous transition, and it's healthy. Youth empowerment, youth engagement, and the recognition of youth voices has come a long way. It's never been the case that youth were not powerful. It's never been the case in my experience that a young voice will not be taken seriously. But I think your current generation has a capacity that is larger because of a willingness to work together, because of whether it's Sierra Youth Coalition or Youth Climate Network or Young Greens, and obviously I'm very grateful you're involved in Young Greens. There is strength in numbers. There is a tremendous benefit in peer-to-peer mentoring, which of course Ilona Doherty was mentioning last night. There's a benefit in mentoring from those of us who are older, much older, much older. When I left Sierra Club, the Sierra Youth Coalition said I could continue to hang on to the term of youth emeritus. So I like that, and I hope you won't mind if I try to be Young Green emeritus. But in any case, you've got better capacity. You've got the linkages, you've got much better technology. The ability to use computers, to provide desktop publishing, to go search an issue out, doing your research online. Boy, was it ever hard to do research in the 1970s on Cape Breton Island. The only reason I had any ability to write a fact sheet about why we shouldn't spray Nova Scotia with organophosphate insecticides, and particularly with fenitrathion, is that I had been a high school activist and I brought all my files with me. Many things I didn't bring with me to Canada, but I brought all my pesticide files. I'm very glad I had them because there was no library in the town where I lived, and it was really hard to get documentation and evidence. And now you go online, you can find it, you can look up documentation, you can get peer-reviewed studies, you can pull them together, you can download from UN websites the latest statistics. The flip side of where we are now is that it's so much, the issues are so much larger, the timelines are so much shorter. La question d'urgence, c'est plus pression, le temps presse, vraiment le temps presse. Ce n'est pas trop tard, mais vraiment, ce moment d'histoire de toute l'humanité, il n'y a aucune fois qu'il y a un temps où le temps presse comme maintenant. We are totally running out of time. And it's too much to say, oh, it's all your, job because you're young and you know how to use Facebook and YouTube, and us older ones we don't, so we'll leave it to you. This is, one of those all hands on deck moments. It's all hands on deck on the current crisis, and we need to do it together. But the youth movement does have a much larger role. Claim your space. Never let anyone shut you down. The youth movement has an absolute right to demand of governments that they be accountable and that they think for the long term. And in this case, we're not even talking about our grandchildren's futures. We're talking about your lifetimes. We are facing very scary, bad times unless we change human behavior and economies and addiction to fossil fuels in the immediate short term. I know we can do it. I know that the political change that comes from youth reaching out to youth to get young people voting is critical, and we are all ears. I want you to know the campaign committee, the Council of Greens, and me as leader of the Green Party, please send us your ideas, send me your ideas, anything you think will work. If you get a group of young people together on a campus and you think I can only get 8 to 10 people together, I'll come talk to them. It is more critical than anything I can imagine to get out the youth vote in the next election, because we're running out of time and youth have the power to change the government of this country just by showing up. So we need each other. Je suis fière énormément de tout le mouvement de jeunesse au Canada et particulièrement pour les jeunes verts. Je pense qu'ensemble, nous pouvons changer le monde. C'est vrai que nous pouvons changer le monde. Nous avons le pouvoir. Mais on doit travailler fort et on doit travailler ensemble. And anything you want me to do for you, I'll be there. I'm grateful to you like you wouldn't know, each and every one of you, for being committed to the Green Party. And I like the other slogan for this conference. I like this one too. But I really think, you'll be young for a while, but you'll be green forever. And I really want to thank you for that. It means it's an enormous honor to all of us older folks that any of you think it's worth giving your time to the Green Party. It is a commitment, and it does all of us great honor. And as an old activist who was once a young activist, stick with it. One thing I usually want to, I forget rambling on, but one thing I forgot to mention is choosing to do what you love most is going to give you the best life you can imagine. Don't ever be dissuaded by someone who tells you should be getting a job doing blah, 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 because it will pay more. The only things worth doing are the things you love doing. You can, in fact, make a living having a life, and you can also ensure that while you're having your life, you're doing what needs to be done for the cause, whatever cause it is that moves you. So in my experience, although I've sacrificed a lot financially over the years, and there's things that you would say, well, that might have been a very bad time fighting the pulp company and losing your land, would not make any decisions differently. Living your entire life based on principles and on what you believe in, and feeling that you've made a difference, has incalculable benefits. You meet the coolest people, you have the best friends, because the people with whom you work are people who also care deeply and have principles and are worth knowing. So it's actually where you meet fun people. So don't forget that part too. It's really important to have fun saving the world. We won't save the world if we forget to have fun. And that's one thing I know youth are not likely to do, is to forget to have fun. So please also invite me to your parties. I'll try not to wreck them. Thank you very much.